Hey everybody, this is Ryan with the Farm to Table Direct Show. We're here at Okie Homestead Expo 2025 at the Mays County Fairground in Pryor, Oklahoma, and I'm sitting here with Shawn and Beth Dougherty from a whole bunch of places. Salzier Farm, One Cow Revolution, Independent Farmstead, all of the above.
And Toronto, Ohio.
Oh yeah, Toronto, Ohio, and let's see, and we'll get into this in a minute, but Dougherty Butcher Trailers, and and if
That's what our son does. That's
it.
absolutely right.
So,
Yep.
I want to get to that multi-generational thing, and that's great. And that isn't that the reward? I mean, besides the
It's
food.
absolutely the reward. Yep. Yep.
Well, listen, we wanted to kind of talk to y'all. Everybody, I know kind of the books and what y'all speaking subjects are when you go out, and which are great. I mean, and y'all help. I've said y'all's booth always has people there asking questions online, and that's great because y'all are so willing to share that knowledge. But, kind of y'all's mission statement, if you will, on your own page was about land reclamation, about taking a piece of land that may not be the best piece of land that's existent or has been used and abused and bringing that back to life. And I talked to you about the reliance scale there that you've got. And so we're kind of going to pull that together because many people believe that if it's not already fertile or it don't already have good soil, that it's just junk and let's walk away. And
Well, yeah, the problem is that that's what's left now. And
Right.
you can't compete with the big guys
No.
in terms of getting the good stuff. So we have to know that we're going to end up with the edges and pieces. And what we've got to do is figure out how to turn that into a farm that will feed us.
Okay.
And that's what our mission has been. And we started with land that was unsuitable for agriculture, of course,
Right.
in the state of Ohio. And we really worked hard to make it the farm that produces 95% of what we eat.
And that is a huge percentage, by the way.
Yeah.
That kind of answers part of that scale of how much do you do for your own, and that's a huge amount.
I wanted to speak to the reclamation end.
Right.
And the other reason, one reason that we're looking at land reclamation is that most of the people we know, us ordinary people without millions of dollars, are only going to be able to afford,
Right.
or even we're only going to be able to afford bad land, or maybe none at all. We may have to borrow, beg, steal
Right.
the land we're on. But I also want to point out that when we're using land that needs to be reclaimed, there are some hidden pluses to that. We heard one today from a guy who is homesteading what was previously a junkyard. And as he's pulling all these cars and all this metal off his place, what does he find he has? But good stands a big blue stem.
Huh.
He's got old tallgrass prairie grass going on land because it's been abused, because it's been abandoned,
Right.
because it's been sitting neglected for a long time. So there are advantages to that.
Right. And outside of price and availability, but sometimes there's those hidden jewels in there. And I mean, I personally moved on to about a little over 4 acres. I say I have a rock farm because it's on top of there's the old uphill both ways. That's where I live. That's where I live, is uphill both ways, and I like that. But it's so much clay, and it's so much rock, and it's so much stuff. But yet I look at the stuff that grows there naturally. I've got naturally occurring wild onion. I've got naturally occurring wild garlic, and it's like it's growing there on its own. Right. So if it's growing on its own, anything will grow there. It with some work, but I mean, it's there. So I appreciate, sometimes taking what nobody wanted, because that's what that property was, because the previous owners did things on that property that were make a person sketchy. Okay. So nobody wanted it. And when the police know the address by heart, that's why nobody wanted it. But that's okay. We've taken it over and we've done things to it and made it better. So, and that's what it is. So what led you there? Was it your own journey of that and finding that for yourself, or just realizing the situation with land?
We knew we wanted to get out of the city, so we wanted to find something that we could get onto that wouldn't be too expensive.
Right.
And it was that led us to this understanding that every piece of land needs somebody to take it on, to love it, to appreciate it, to say, I'm going to make this into my space.
Right.
And then we start reading Wendell Berry. And
Right.
Wendell Berry really talks about my place, the place that we want to settle in.
Right.
And that journey we hope that, I always say we want to see a million little farms just like ours all over the country.
Right.
It would transform our country if we would all take the little piece of land where we are and make it into a Garden of Eden.
Right. I was speaking with Clyde with the garden planner
Yes.
over there, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking, and he, I'd heard about Victory Gardens from back in the day and everything, but he told me that during that time, that 40% of the produce in this country was produced in backyard gardens and on farms, and we've gotten away from that.
Right. Absolutely.
We used to consider that patriotic.
Right.
Now it's illegal. A lot
No
of
kidding,
it.
right?
I wanted to
Are we
speak to that-
extremist?
I wanted to speak to that cheap land thing too, in that because we could pay cash for it,
Right.
there was no one. It meant Shawn was home more because we could reduce our cash needs, but
Right.
we didn't put ourselves in the position of being tempted to treat this land badly in order to get cash out of it.
I got
We
you.
didn't need it to produce money because we paid cash for it and we kept within our means.
Right.
And so that freedom to slow down and say, what does this land do well? What's the nature of this land? What can it be asked to do? And as Wendell Berry says, what should it never be asked to do?
Right.
And we could learn that because we were buying cheap.
Right.
And the Lord said, whatsoever you do for the least of my brothers. I think he must have had just a little corner of that in mind for the rest of the planet too.
There you go, and it's you talk about that knowing what your land. I've owned my property for 6 years. We were just, well, let me see. I'm trying to think back to where I was at. 4.5, 5 years. Our kids were living in the house, but I was just working, taking care of it. So I had several years of being on the land without actually doing anything on the land. I mean, mowing it and keeping the grass, and to actually see where the water lays,
Right.
where to go, where not to go, finding all the little resources that where it sheds water, where it holds water, and so knowing, looking at what's going on naturally around it, because I've got national forest and woods all over, and so it's like I really have to. I got a rocks, so but it's I've gotten to know that piece of property over the period of that time before I've not planted anything yet. I'm getting ready to. This is the year, but it's like I've not planted anything yet, and it's like I've had time to learn where to go, where to put what, where the sunlight's at, how the land reacts to water, snow, ice, all that stuff. So I think it's very important. So, and actually I've already talked about all that stuff right there. Anyway, but food security wise, when a person has that piece of land, even if it's like you said, a reclaimed, or it's been used and abused or misused, what can that turn a person's food security and that scale there of moving them? How much of an impact does that have, even if it's a small place? Do y'all see when y'all are around and you see these things? If you're asking what I'm saying, well, just the impact that even a small piece of land can have in a person's life and their security, food-wise. Yeah.
It doesn't take very many acres, and most ecosystems produce all the food a family needs.
Right.
Like if you can run a dairy cow and plant yourself maybe a little bit less than an acre of various things, people food crops, animal food crops, soil food crops, you can produce everything a family of, well, in our case, a family of 10 needs to eat. Now
Right.
that means that you're going to eat what you grow and not elect other things to eat, or you're going to treat those things as luxuries.
Right.
And I'm all for luxuries, and I'm all for commerce within our local community. Right. So we buy wheat from a guy down the road who raises it without spraying it.
Right.
It's locally produced. It lets us eat some bread and feed the chickens some fermented grain.
Right.
But what our needs are, it's important to us to know that what we're asking that land to do is something we can go on helping it do, even if there are no inputs. So
Okay.
if somebody cut off our access to that grain, we'd have chicken dinner for a few Sundays, and then we'd have a smaller flock, and the farm would go on feeding those chickens.
Right. Okay.
And it doesn't take very many acres. In Appalachia, I would say 10.
Right.
We'd probably put firewood on the fire too, as well as feed you.
Right. Okay, well, I mean, because that is important, and where you're at. I mean, I know geography has so much of an impact in that. I mean, I'm in the South Ozarks, so I got a little different thing than other people, but it's real similar to Appalachia and kind of how that the land can provide a lot with a little bit, you know. So, what are some of the most common challenges that somebody would face with, regenerating neglected land?
I mean, the first thing I think they're mental challenges.
Right.
It's just their expectations. What they people see obstacles that aren't there. They believe, for example, your neighbor, your vet, your feed store guy, everybody's going to tell you can't raise a steer without grain. You can't raise a dairy cow without grain. Well,
Right.
if it doesn't occur to you that they might be wrong, that's a big obstacle right there.
Right.
They are wrong, and you can.
Right.
You're just going to have a different set of expectations for those animals.
Right.
So I would say that would be a first big obstacle.
Yeah, I think another one is patience. We have to be patient. This whole notion of trying to reclaim land takes time.
Right.
Now, you can decide that, well, I'm going to bring in a bulldozer and I'm going to do, but what we suggest is nudging, gently suggesting to the homestead, I think this will help. We try that on, and then we wait to see how it responds
Right.
before we go ahead. So I think patience is an awful lot of, and many farmers do not have much patience.
I think it's a people thing.
It is,
And,
it is.
I tell people all the time, we're the microwave generation.
Yep.
We,
that's right.
we want things
And the
instantly.
McDonald's generation.
And McDonald's
That's
and,
right.
and social and everything's a click
right.
and everything
That's
is, what used to take days or weeks or months takes minutes,
That's right.
So, and I think that has affected that.
Absolutely.
I thought I had land that shedded water, and it does, to a degree because of the elevation. But we've had such strong winters these last 2 years that I have seen what oversaturation does on the property, and I have found this like, oh, okay, I got to pay attention to this.
That's
and so
right.
it has been that patience of time.
Yeah, the other thing that you mentioned is paying attention. It's observation. It's
Right.
watching what happens as we try and move in a direction and seeing what does nature do. And instead of fighting nature, it's going along with nature, letting nature lead you.
Right. I was telling some people, one of our other interviews earlier, is that there's so many things that we try to reinvent
Yes.
that is unnecessarily reinvented.
Right.
When nature has a way, God has a way of things in order, and if we'll follow that, it's a lot less of a fight.
Absolutely.
Instead of being so stubborn.
Yes.
One way you see that is, and I'm shocked at how often we run into this now. You encounter somebody who's decided they're going to grow a garden for the first time, and the first thing they do is they order a truckload of soil. Like, what do they think they're walking on?
Right.
And that's ignorance and impatience.
Right.
People don't realize look, that's what that stuff is down there for, and you're going to grow.
It may not be very good, but
Right.
you can improve it.
Right.
And the soil amendments that you buy and bring in
Right.
they're always going to be questionable, even if you know the source is good.
Right.
You don't know that they are the right thing for this soil. Soil tests are just fine, but if you go out and buy a bunch of amendments and apply them to your soil, they aren't the way the land would have done it itself, and they're
Right.
going to have what Shawn calls unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
So impatience, ignorance, failure to recognize our ignorance is
Right.
going to lead us to make mistakes that are expensive and do damage.
I'll take my own land. I watched it, and plus, like I said, knowing previous activities on the land, I'm gonna be honest with you, nervous with the idea of putting anything in the soil because what's coming out of it. And so I had every intention, and I probably will this year just because of resources, go raised bed so that I can, because I'm still getting back into the whole gardening thing, and it's been several years since I did one, and I tried some container stuff in my backyard when I was still in town, and overwatering, weather, learning mistakes, and that's okay. But I really was like, man, the soil's so rocky. It's so this. I mean, yeah, great for potatoes and corn, but what else can I grow, And I watched my neighbor, who's an older gentleman, he's in his 70s. He went out there, tilled up a piece of his land. He hadn't gardened in a few years, but he tilled it up, grew a full garden, beans, cucumbers, a whole big old garden. And I'm like, okay, if he can grow it across the fence,
Yes.
I can grow it over here.
That's right.
And so it's kind of like, well, okay, I can rethink this gardening thing and how I want to do it on the property. And he's already told me I can use his tiller, so that's.
Oh, there you go.
he's got a tractor-driven tiller too, so it's like, I've done the old walk behind, and I don't feel like dying. But anyway, so listen, I know over 25 years and over doing this period of time the lessons learned, but I'm helping people. Is there any particular story or particular somebody you've helped that kind of stood out as a success story on doing the same thing of reclaiming land, or is there? I know it's kind of on the spot question. I'm sorry, but
Land reclamation. Somebody
well,
else's
like somebody
land
who's done what y'all done,
reclamation.
taken a piece of land that was maybe less desirable and
So we were at Rory Feek's.
Okay.
And there was one of his relatives, one of the girls, came up to us, and we had said to her, "What you need to be doing is bale grazing these cattle on
Okay.
this land." So the land was terrible. There was nothing there, but we said rotate the cows just as if there is land there, but put hay bales into
Okay.
those paddocks. And she came back to us with these pictures, and she said, "You will not believe what that looks like." All of this had grown in. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was really fun to see what she had done with that. It was just beautiful.
And saying that's what I was able to do, that feedback when you get to see something like that.
Oh, yes,
where,
right,
right. That piece of advice on, like you said, maybe a land that wasn't doing what it could have been doing.
Right.
And I know y'all are friends with Joel, and know him, and I had talked to him, of course, but seeing the pictures of what Polyface looked like when their family got it to what it looks like now.
Yes.
And it's like, okay.
That's right.
You know.
We can all do that.
Yeah.
And we just need to find a piece of property. And again, it's going to be really rough if it's something we can afford.
Right, of course.
And then we just need to start that process. And what he said, we were just on a panel with him, and somebody asked, what's your advice? And he says, don't give up.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it.
Right.
And that's
and I think that's reasonable advice. So for somebody who's maybe looking at this and stuff and has never really considered that approach, they're still out there shopping for that perfect piece of land. What's a mindset shift they need to consider?
Well, I guess it would help a lot if we could start thinking that when God made the world, it was all beautiful and productive.
Right.
And so it's been there. And he's a lot bigger than we are, and nature's a lot bigger than we are. We can make some really big messes, and nature can clean them up.
Right.
When they bombed Bikini Bay, they said it'll be 1,000 years before we can come back. And they went back in 20, and the place was the prettiest part of the Pacific because
Right.
nature can heal itself. And so I think that if we can hang on to the knowledge that this land was beautiful once, there are lots of uglier places that other people have made beautiful. You mentioned Polyface. Shawn's got a cousin out in western Oklahoma with a beautiful little gem of a place that he and his wife reclaimed from, a corner of a quarter section that was devastated.
Right.
If we can just remember, we'll sometimes say to people, look, you got to believe that this works more than you believe in the dead animal at your feet.
Right.
It really is dead, and it really is there. But it's part of a system that works. Even death and decay are part of the beauty and productivity of nature. So it's really helpful if you can keep that in front of your mind in those low moments.
Right. And I like that. I think that's so important that we get caught up with the Pinterest photo idea of what it's going to be.
That's our other piece of advice. Stop looking at Pinterest.
Hey, I get some good kitchen ideas there. No, I'm just kidding. Renovating a kitchen right now. But anyway, for somebody that thinks that farming is out of reach, is that a false accusation? If that's a false mindset that farming is out of reach for somebody?
Yes. I mean, we started off, we had grown up kind of around farms, but we didn't remember most of what we did.
Right.
No, this is the vocation God gave to us.
Right.
To grow our own food, to grow a garden. He's not going to give us a challenge that is beyond us. And everyone can do it. And what you will find is how rewarding it is, how educating it is by just being out there with nature, working with nature, growing your own food.
I will say something tastes better when you grow it yourself.
Oh my, it's absolutely different.
history proves that Shawn's right too. I mean, we can look at the Soviet Union, we can look at Cuba, and we can say here are people whose commercial resources were cut off,
Right.
and they figured out pretty darn quick how to grow potatoes in the cracks in the sidewalk. Because if you're hungry, you've got the best possible. No, if your children are hungry, you have the
Absolutely.
best possible motivation to act like it's going to work, and then get out there and make it happen.
And having that belief. And y'all mentioned land. I spent some time in the Middle East, and it's desert in a lot of that places, or high desert, even if it's in good shape.
Used to be.
Didn't used to be, but it is. I always tell people it's like when you stand on the Euphrates River, you see what can be in the middle of a desert. But we were over there, anyway, long story short, driving down the road. After the fall and after things had kind of changed over there, I'm driving by and there's roadside produce stands that had set up. And to this day, the best looking tomato I ever seen in my life was in that desert sitting on that roadside stand. And I couldn't stop and get it.
Too bad.
I just couldn't stop, but it was like, man, their oranges, their tomatoes, all stuff just looked so great, and it was in the middle of a desert.
Right.
So I mean, it can be done anywhere, literally.
That's right.
And so, well, listen, I appreciate y'all guys coming on. I mean, I want to touch this for just a minute. I mentioned 25 years, and y'all are multi-generational. Now, it's y'all's kid, your son now with that, grandkids in the joint. Is that gonna,
We certainly hope so.
When our house burned down 2 years ago, we always say the boys. We do have 2 girls, and girls, you count too, for sure. But the kids circled back and set about rebuilding.
Right.
And they built us a load-bearing brick, timber frame, beautiful house, which we've
nice.
just moved into. So that's one way that everybody considers the home farm their farm and the
Right.
refuge and the place that has to be kept up. And they talk among themselves about who needs to be close and make sure that if and when there comes a point when we can't do it, somebody else is doing it. A lot of them either help on their in-laws' farms or
Right.
have their own places.
Right.
Our son Luke has a business selling. He butchers for people. He does a bunch of things. He's a shearer. He's a farrier.
Right.
He butchers for people, but he builds and sells trailers with refrigerated, CoolBot operated coolers, big gantry, rails that you can haul up a carcass.
Slide it right
Yeah,
into the.
it's created. I don't want to call us entrepreneurs. I'm not really sure what that word means. It's created a lot of people who believe in good work, who like
Right.
to do it, who can problem solve really well,
Right.
and who love to be family and work together.
Right. Well, and I think that's more important. I mean, that word entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial spirit, I think sometimes gets used in place of just ingenuity or just
Yeah, right,
just getting after it and figuring out something that works.
That's right.
I'm not sure if if farming is entrepreneurial. You can do both, I'm sure.
Right.
But farming a lot of it is service.
Right.
It's response to
Stewardship.
something bigger than you are,
Right.
rather than grabbing a thing and giving it your shape and then marketing that.
Right.
So it's just not the first word we think of.
Well, it's not going to grow the way I want it to grow anyway. It's going to grow how it's supposed to grow. So.
Yeah, and I want
That
to.
is the way we.
Well, I know, but I'm saying I can't go out there and too much manipulate.
That's right. I want it to do what its nature tells it to do, and then I want to be oriented correctly to it so that I can be blessed by it.
Right. Well, that is awesome. Well, I know, guys, I looked at y'all's schedule. Y'all guys are busy. This is the first kickoff for the year, but y'all guys are booked up a pretty good year this year. So a lot of travels up
All
ahead.
over the country.
I even seen Alaska. I
Yes,
think.
yeah.
You looking forward to that?
Oh yes, that's gonna be fun. Have not.
She didn't say nothing.
It's hard for me to be off the farm, so I'm really grateful to Shawn because he does the business management end of what we do.
Right.
We really do try and keep our off-farm dates down to one weekend in a month
Right.
because we got farming to do, and that's
Right.
really what we're about. We want to be home and take care of things.
I read that when I went to onecowrevolution.com. By the way, go to one now. It is .com, right? Yeah.
Yes.
It is.
onecowrevolution.com. That's where I went. Go check it out first and foremost. Great site. Gets you a lot of insight and a lot of information and resources. But one of the things I was reading in there, because it was an answer to a question about do we eat? And it was about the fact that y'all didn't set out to be health nuts or to get that. The statement was in there, we just love to farm.
We do love to.
You know, and I said, you know what, that hits. You're doing what you love to do, and now you're sharing that and teaching that, and we greatly appreciate that, and we appreciate the time. So I know that's the way to to find y'all guys is onecowrevolution.com.
That's correct.
Now, if I understand, y'all aren't really out on the socials that much.
We don't use the internet
We don't
to
do it.
market ourselves or to put much out there. We're
Right.
busy doing other things.
Right.
But Shawn was going to say,
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube
Stuff with
where
like
people
what we-
yeah, that's right, who have brought us in to speak.
Right.
But yes, we aren't doing it as much as so.
they can search our name and a lot of stuff will come up.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. But yeah, it's and that's cool. I mean, that's fine. I just want to make sure that if somebody wants to go find y'all, that's the one place is at onecowrevolution.com.
Right.
And you really need to check out that premise of One Cow Revolution. When we talked last time, y'all shared that with us, and it just kind of changed my mindset of having a cow.
In November, our new book's coming out from Chelsea Green, and it's called One Cow Revolution.
Okay, so a new book in November
That's right.
by Chelsea Green, One Cow
All on the dairy cow.
all on the dairy cow. So we'll look forward to that. I know we'll be seeing you again at a couple of other places this year because we're on similar places. But I wish I could go to Alaska with you. But, that means, anyway, that's a different story. But anyway, we appreciate y'all taking the time to sit with us. I know y'all are super busy up here, and I love that. For 2 days, folks, here at this event, and busy from beginning to end, and giving many speeches, not just one and leaving, and I appreciate that. Teachers' hearts.
Yes,
And I think
and we love for this to work.
absolutely. Well, listen, folks, there you go. Great story, great advice, and great ideas for that land you're looking for. Maybe a place you didn't think it was, and so we appreciate that, and we appreciate all of that. So go check them out on onecowrevolution.com, or if you see them out at an event, go check.
Say
out what
hello
they-
to us.
Say hi.
That's right. That's right.
Go to their booth. They're always set up, and say hi, and hang out with them. But anyway, that's how we're going to wrap this up. We appreciate y'all guys so much again. Look forward to seeing y'all again in the future down the road. And everybody, as we always say, prepare for the unexpected and keep it local.